I'm Joe Sanwright Callender, the author of Making Do Growing Up Colored in Jim Crow's South During the Great Depression. And it's a mouthful for me to also give my title, but I'm getting used to it. And really, the title was my mom's. And this whole book was an inspiration by my looking at the lives of my mother and father and how they handled themselves as we were growing up, and then learning more at a later time of what the Jim Crow South was like that they grew up in. I just kept thinking this is a heroic tale of how they met, married, and began their life in the midst of that climate. So the inspiration of the story came from my parents. And the characters, Dee Dee and Charles, were fictional characters that were composites of my parents, some relatives, some elder friends, and their stories woven together to make this story hopefully come alive to you who are reading it. It's definitely every time I read it, because I've been going through making a student writing journal at this time and a teacher's guide. And, I'm just looking at it and I'm like, whoa. So the inspiration came from my parents, but I can honestly say that one of my best friends, Phyllis Kelly, and my cousin Anne were the ones who kept me focused on doing uh, my best in writing this story. They both knew that what I was trying to accomplish, but they gave me this one tip that I could say truly helped me. It was like they talk about the Greek muses that muse that helped in writing stories in the ancient times. But they gave me this advice. They said, before you start writing, pray. And it was such a simple bit of advice that, I thought about it periodically as I was writing, but not continually until I just realized that the story, I was, going nowhere fast, and the story was kind of convoluted, but it didn't have the structure that I was looking for and that I had in my mind's eye. But I could truly say the moment that I started praying and asking for the Lord's help in making this story come alive, that's when things started to fall into place. One of the first things that came together was I was writing it as a third person narrative, and I was using the dialogue, of course, that I felt the two characters were uh, capable of, how would they respond to a situation. So I was trying to think of their voices. And John Ricci, taking a class with him, he said that your voice is doesn't come through as the character; it sounds more like you. And so he said to try to think more about how, the motivations of the character, to try to get a true voice so that your voice doesn't come through. And that was the third person voice. So what came to mind was to write this as two different individuals and have the chapters back to back, um, with one, my main character Dee Dee, talking, and then follow that with the narrative of Charles's life. And that seemed to work really well. So, it's not just, as someone said, a young adult romance novel. It's more of a coming of age story of two characters who are going through a pretty terrible time. But they, every single story that I've read about times of trouble and tribulation, you wonder, how do these people live their lives? And that there is this sameness in how people approached just the daily day-to-day life. They wanted to get ahead, Parents wanted to feed their children. They wanted them to grow up with a better opportunity than they had. And in all of the narratives that I've looked at of people who came through that time, their parents wanted them to keep faith in God. And so those pieces were what I attempted to pull together in with the backdrop of the Jim Crow South and the, um, I guess, the approach of World War II, because it wasn't as evident when the story first began, and it became more and more of an issue, and it became more of a reality as time progressed, because people weren't really seeing it as that. Initially, they thought it was a foreign war, far away, but it becomes more and more evident as the chapters uh, approach the climax of each. Well, there are three volumes, but as each volume approaches a climax, the war becomes more evident to the characters. So that's basically my inspiration and structure, and hope to share more with you in the weeks to come. Thank you. Please subscribe, please share. And, this is really different for me because it's like a very personal story. I do my happy little garbage truck talks, and it's easier because I'm talking about something that has to do with my profession as a teacher. But this is the personal story of my family, and in some ways, the people who were the contemporaries of my family. So, anyhow, exciting, and thank you all who've purchased a copy. And it's on Amazon, and I'll leave some information in the description box. So thank you very much, and we'll talk later. Bye bye.